I've got a problem with my 76 series Land Cruiser. And I've been there before in my 79 series.
The fuel light just came on a couple of minutes ago. I think I'm missing 50, 60 litres. I'm towing a trailer as well. But I think I'm gonna make it. Okay, fuel situation has become dire. I don't know what's going on.
And now I'm in the same boat with the 76. I have caused this fuel range to diminish by a staggering 40%. 40%? That's massive. I've got a fair idea of what's causing this.
Get the tyres and in up, put a full rack on it, a rock sliders and a 4-inch lift.
Well, the easy solution is to just slap an extended tank, carry some more jerry cans. Get over it. It's a four-wheel drive, it's going to burn more fuel. You're right, but I'd really like to know which of these mods is causing the biggest impact. Is there something I can change or do something about? Uh-oh, better refuel. Can I mitigate it? But we're going to have a problem. Finding out which one is worse than the other, it's going to be near impossible. But what I have done,
loads of research, forums, wind tunnel test data, real world experiences, combining all of these to get the average. And of course, my own experience.
I honestly don't know how much fuel I have.
the most obvious one to start with for me is the roof rack. Probably one of the most important mods when you want to carry stuff. You're adding something square on the roof, but how much does it really affect your fuel economy? My 76 series.
The roof rack went on. I went from 10 litres to 100, now up to 11 litres. Reminder, that's an empty rack.
I looked into some studies done in wind tunnels over in the US. They took a passenger vehicle and put a roof load on it.
Here's what happened. A Corolla sedan resulted in a fuel consumption increase of 8.8 for city driving, 20.8 on the highway. 20.8?
The exact same roof load, put it on an SUV.
A fuel consumption increase of only 2.5 in city driving and 6.2 on the highway. That's kind of promising.
Conclusion was the smaller vehicle with a smaller engine, it needed to use a lot more engine load.
In other words, smaller vehicles are more sensitive to aerodynamic changes.
Mate, it's four-wheel drive only. If you factor in a four-wheel drive, things get even worse. Awnings, shower tents, max tracks, boxes, solar panels, the rooftop tent, the one that is fixed the entire time. That is going to impact your vehicle. And I think you already knew that, but by how much? Real world example of someone I know quite well. Nissan Patrol, double swag on the roof rack. Burnt an extra 3 litres to the 100.
Real world testing and feedback collected from many forums. Yeah, blokes love to talk about fuel range.
Nice Jeep, man.
Yeah, man, fuel and stuff.
Giddy up yet.
I found a range from 10 to 30%, and this reflected my experiences.
When I've got swags and boxes and everything up there and we're fully loaded for a trip, there's a lot extra surface area. And speaking of surface area, when you add a rooftop tent, I would suggest maybe looking for one that's a bit more aerodynamic. I came across a few comments about suspension being a culprit for fuel consumption.
Looking into it, I couldn't find any evidence.
I think what you should really blame it on is the reason why you are lifting the car in the first place. If it's to put bigger tyres on, then you're going to start burning fuel. Just going a little bit bigger, it's not too bad. Expect a little bit of extra fuel consumption, an extra litre per 100. I was initially getting 10.7 per 100, 33s. 11.7. But if you're going to lift it to a 4-inch lift, for example, to fit 35s, now we're talking a much greater rate of fuel consumption.
Seeking real-world testing and feedback, the average bracket I found is between 10% and up to 25%. And there were a few that did worse than that.
GU Patrol 2003 model, before he was getting 14.5 litres to the 100, he slapped on 35-inch tyres and a 4-inch lift. Now, it's gone up by 5.5 litres to the 100. 27.5% increase in fuel consumption.
The exact same combo in my 76 Series 2.8.
Around about 20% increase.
If we take the Prado, just to give you an example of how different it can be.
When I increased the tyres half an inch bigger, I improved my fuel economy on the highway. It was a little bit less around the city, but on the highway it sat better and the speedo was correct. But then, don't they look huge on this car?
Going beyond the ideal size, the increase of fuel consumption is going to be much sharper. And that's exactly what I experienced with my Hilux.
It didn't tolerate tyre upgrades like the Prado did or the 76 did. By the time I got to 33-inch tyres, putting those 33s on compromised the whole vehicle in itself. It's made it more expensive to drive, it's capped the range a bit.
In fact, it got so bad I lost the use of 6th gear, which then makes fuel consumption even worse.
100% don't go to 33s.
They're all 2.8 litre engines, so what's going on? The gearing. It's not all about the size of the engine.
So I thought about weight. Weight must have some kind of impact on your four-wheel drive fuel economy. Turns out, every 50 kilos is 1 to 2% of extra fuel consumption. So what is it? 1 or 2%? The smaller vehicle, the smaller engine, that's more towards the 2%. It gets affected more. They're not really designed to carry extra weight. But a vehicle like this, a bigger SUV, not an SUV. Mate, four-wheel drive only. Bigger four-wheel drive will be more towards the 1% scale. I reckon you could work on 1.5%. Every 50 kilos, you look at all the stuff on the vehicle, adds up real quick. And this got me thinking about my mods again on the 76. The bull bar, the lights, the winch, side steps, the roof rack, the cargo on the roof rack, the tyres, the wheels. What about the cargo inside? Let's say your vehicle does 10 litres per 100. Let's add 500 kilos. That's easy to quantify. It's either going to be 10 or 20% worse off. Let's call it 15% in the middle. Some people get GVM upgrades, so we're talking in excess of a ton for some people. But it's not just about the weight.
With most vehicles, aerodynamics are factored in with the design. Okay, that's a terrible example. That's better.
Many of us don't think about this, which means when you put a bull bar on your vehicle, anything on the front of your vehicle, it's not aerodynamic.
However, very difficult to quantify. Limited research has been done by a few emissions departments, which claim around 10 to 20% worse consumption from bolt-on accessories.
But there's an even bigger problem, and it doesn't matter if you have all the mods or not. This can and will double your fuel consumption. And therefore we need to visit the two worst terrains possible to drive on. And one of these is much worse than the other. So taxing on fuel. There's sand and there's mud. Glorious mud. Mud is fun.
Maybe not for everyone.
So bogged.
Climbing hills, or even just driving in mud, you're spinning the wheels a lot more than what you're moving. You could class that as aggressive driving. And it's very much like sand. Especially if it's soft. Sand gets hot, and when it's hot, the sand gets very, very soft. Deep sand tracks. You are again spinning the wheels more than you are actually moving forward. And if you belly out, but once you're done in the sand, you're pretty much done. When it comes to mud, the mud sticks with you. It sticks like to a blanket. Or some people might say it sticks like to a car seat. That stuff comes with you. It's going to clog up your wheels, it's going to set the balance off, which I'm sure doesn't help with fuel economy. But it's more about the unsprung weight. The extra mud you're carrying on your wheels. There's loads of mud inside it, really bad wobble. It can also cause resistance.
It's actually constantly wearing at it. Not only when you use the brakes, it's constant because it's all stuck in there. Take the wheels off, wash your brakes out. If you don't get it all out, it's going to slowly grind away at it.
So much muck in there.
And if your vehicle sounds like a freight train, that's because there's some mud and there's some rocks stuck inside your brake guard.
Take the Simpson Desert for example. We got so stuck, so bogged, so clogged in mud. By the time we got to Birdsville, man, we were washing so much stuff off that car, and it was still on there.
Picked up about 300 kilos of mud, man.
Pretty safe to estimate 200 kilos worth of mud and sand stuck to the car. So when mud mixes with sand, it solidifies and it's there like a hard rock. So that's really going to add to your fuel economy. And from real world testing, it's estimated that mud adds about 50% to your fuel consumption. So if you were doing 10 litres per 100, you could be doing up to 15 litres per 100. Sand is actually worse. It'll double your fuel consumption if you get these things wrong. Driving in sand, the vehicle has to work so much harder. It's a constant battle, fighting through that sand. And it's made even worse when people don't lower their tyres correctly, or they're using the wrong gearing. And I'm not talking about automatic versus manual here. I'm talking about low range and high range.
If only I watched more Ronny Dahl videos, I'd know what to do.
And therefore the margin is so wide, 50% to 100%. So how do we make this better? How do we make the vehicle burn less fuel?
This is where you should air down. A lot of people make the mistake of driving onto the beach and then airing down.
But how far do you go? Because sand is so vastly different.
Lower your tyres to what you think is about right.
If the vehicle is still struggling and you haven't reached 12 PSI yet,
Then go lower until you reach 12 PSI. You generally don't have to worry about the tyres coming off the wheel. There's been a lot of scaremongering about that. It takes a lot to debead a tyre.
the next one is low range and high range. When do you know what to be in?
If high range, it's slowing your car down and you just can't get out and you're really labouring that engine hard, that's when you got to go to low range. Once you're out of that boggy situation, once you reach 40 kilometres per hour,
I think we could go to high range, boys.
or you're revving it off your car, that's when you put it back into high range.
Now, many will argue,
Hey man, low range 4x4 uses too much fuel.
sure, a higher RPM when you don't really need to be that high is going to use more fuel.
And I don't like that blanket statement because it does make some people reluctant to use low range. We should be focusing on how much your engine is labouring. High range in a low range situation, it's not going to work for you.
The vehicle's starting to work a lot harder. So rather than putting this unnecessary wear on the gearbox in the vehicle, you might as well go to low range. Low range. Vehicle's working a lot less now. Labouring the engine, that's worse.
And then you'll be able to lower your fuel consumption as much as possible because you might not be able to do anything about the mods, but you are in control of this situation.
These driving techniques, I've more or less got down pat with the 76. I know the tyre pressures, which gearing to use, but it doesn't sort my problem out. And that's extending my range. I don't want to be stripping all the mods off the car. Some of them I need. Therefore, I've installed a long range tank. But this is my biggest problem. I don't know my range. I can't tell my range even on the gauge.
And that might sound a bit funny because I have increased my range, but I don't know the range.
The core of my biggest problem is within the fuel tank, the fuel sender, also known as a fuel level sensor. This device from factory is already not the best to go by.
Before I put this tank in the 76, I knew exactly where my gauge was at. When the light came on, I knew for a fact that I would still have 100 kilometres. And that's with the bigger tyres. There's the tank in question, 180 litres. So I've increased my fuel capacity by 50 litres. Now, the fuel light will come on and I could be empty. It has happened before. That sender comes out and actually goes into this one here.
Here's what happens when you use a factory sender in an aftermarket tank.
Run out of fuel. That was my first time draining the 150 litre tank. The fuel light was on for quite a while, but the gauge itself hadn't reached the back. So we're about 50k short of the servo. That's all good because we can just pump it in ourselves.
Usually we would install these tanks when we got a big trip coming up.
Never do big mods before you go somewhere. Oops.
And despite those wise words, the extended fuel tank is a common one to be installed just before a trip.
There's a solution to this, and I've been doing it the whole way along. It's completely drained, so now I'm going to fill it up 20 litres at a time. Take a photo every 20 litres. So the last line represents, for me, 20 litres. But you've got to give it 20 minutes to sit for a while to make sure it's 100% accurate. Now, who's going to do that? Probably not you. So here's the easy method. Just head to the servo. When you're halfway, and you're exactly halfway, fill it up. But take a photo first, and then you'll know exactly how many litres you got when it's exactly on half. When you're at a quarter, fill it up, calculate. So if you do want to do the shortcut, it's gonna be just as accurate. 3/4, and it doesn't have to be exactly at those increments. I mean, you could do quarter the first time, maybe 3/4 the next time, but the most important one, when the fuel light comes on, better refuel, immediately go to your closest service station and fill it up. Then you'll know exactly what you got left when the fuel light comes on. Just calculate the kilometres to the service station if it's still a bit of a drive. Those incremental lines you have now on your gauge, you now know exactly where you're at.
And that's how you eliminate fuel anxiety.